Some residents of Atlanta's whitest and wealthiest district want a divorce from the city, blaming rising crime during the pandemic. Bloomberg Business took a deep dive into the Buckhead City Committee's push, highlighting political divisiveness over race and politics. If successful, Buckhead becoming its own city would have devastating effects on the city of Atlanta's budget and school district. Bloomberg Bureau Chief Brett Pulley is one of the authors of this report and joins me now to discuss. So Bloomberg Bureau Chief Brett Pulley is one of the authors of this report and joins me now to discuss. Really glad you are here. This is not the first time that this conversation has popped up about Buckhead leaving, but it's certainly got a lot more energy now, and it seems like it could actually happen maybe. So my first question to you is, why does Buckhead want a divorce, or at least some people in Buckhead?
No, you're right. It is getting a lot more energy this time than times in the past, and that has so much to do with the rise in crime in the area and throughout the city. The rise in violent crime has given it a big push, and it's also, Anne-Marie, it's part of what's been going on in Atlanta and the metro region for a number of times. This whole cityhood movement. There have been about a dozen cities that have incorporated in the area. But what's different this time is that this is the first time that it would be that a city would be created, actually carved out of the existing city.
But here's the thing, it's true, we have seen a rise in crime in cities across the country. Part of it has to do with the pandemic. Why do those who are behind this movement think that Buckhead could go it alone and be more successful in terms of their own policing? I mean, a police force is a pretty expensive thing. What are they saying that they would do differently that they can't do while being part of the city of Atlanta?
No, you're absolutely right. And one of the things that's so different now also is that what's happened is that there's a group led by a gentleman who's really a transplant from the New York area who moved to Atlanta a few years ago, Bill White, and they've raised about $1 million now for this effort. So they're getting some financial energy behind them. And as you pointed out, depending on who you talk to, the impact that this will have on the existing city of Atlanta varies. Some groups say, look, there's no doubt about 38% of the property tax that goes to the city of Atlanta comes from this area known as Buckhead, which, as you pointed out, is a very wealthy area. So that alone will have, a significant impact on the city's finances. And then, of course, there are some services, as you point out, such as police, that they'll take away from the city of Atlanta and have to finance themselves. And you're right, it's extremely expensive, but they insist that they'll do it differently. Look, much of as you pointed out, this rise in crime is something that's impacting cities across the country. And what you're getting from those in Buckhead who want to succeed and create this separate city is that this is all the fault of the current mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, and being too soft on crime. So what they're saying is they will be tougher on crime. But of course, as you've also pointed out, look, that a lot of this is the post-pandemic impact that unfortunately a lot of cities are experiencing. And of course, also the increasingly ease with which young people are getting their hands on guns as well.
You use the word secede, and a lot of people are. I know it's a word that the chief executive officer of the Buckhead City Committee doesn't like because he doesn't like the connotation. But the truth of the matter is there are race and political connotations here because Buckhead looks and votes differently than the rest of Atlanta. For people who just are not familiar, can you talk about that? You spoke to a political scientist who said that a split would cause what they call a racial cleavage. Tell us how Buckhead looks differently than the rest of Atlanta.
Sure. Well, the entire city is about 51% Black, and Buckhead is about 3/4. The area that would create this Buckhead city is about 3/4 white. It's the one zip code within the city that did vote for Donald Trump in the last election. And this strikes really at, this 50-year experiment that's been going on in Atlanta with, with the rise of African Americans in political power, going back to Maynard Jackson becoming the first mayor. And those in Buckhead and in Atlanta who would like to see things stay as they are make just that point. Look, let's make change at City Hall. Let's make change at the ballot box. There's a mayoral race that's coming up next month, in fact, and the incumbent mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, has announced that she is not seeking reelection. There are several candidates who are seeking reelection now, and so many people say, "Look, this is a way to affect change, right?" But those who are pushing for succession have kind of thrown their hands up, I think, in that respect, and are instead pushing for, as you pointed out, what Bill White does not like to refer to as succession. He also doesn't like to refer to it as a divorce, although I think
He
he and
called
those
it a
who
divorce.
were leading this effort called it that initially. And
Yeah.
so there are a lot of things to be ironed out, of course, a lot of political hurdles to be cleared, but they've cleared some significant
Yeah.
ones, and the state legislature has agreed to take this up in the spring.
You talked about this cityhood movement. I'm kind of curious. In the other areas where we've seen this pop up, my question is twofold. In the other areas where we've seen this pop up, are they also areas or towns that demographically look different than the city of Atlanta? And also, you talked about the financial implications that this would have for Atlanta, because this is a very wealthy section of the city. But I'm wondering if there is also a concern that if Buckhead is successful, that we will see a ramping up of this cityhood movement across the state.
Well, that's a great question. I think that it's been a mixed bag of things that have led to the incorporation that we've seen around the area, and it has to do with so many different things, right? Who controls zoning and who controls schools, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think there has been one that has been so clearly racially that strikes at the core of race to the extent that this one does. And I think, it has a lot to do with what Buckhead is and what Buckhead represents. I think many people who've never even been to Atlanta recognize that Buckhead is considered this rather posh address in Atlanta. And so I think in that case it's quite different. I think that you could perhaps see more. Certainly there are some others within the state, some other areas that are seeking to incorporate again for various reasons. But it's these balkanization kind of efforts. I wouldn't be surprised if you see it in other areas of the country if it's successful. So it's yet another example, I think, of the kinds of political and racial divisiveness that we're seeing play out here in this area and across the country.
Yeah. Brett Pulley, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Absolutely.